In this example, we're going to try and find the horizontal asymptotes if we have any. To do that, what we do is we look at the leading terms. And when I say leading terms, I mean the terms that have the highest exponent. And to do this, we need the polynomials to be written in standard form. Once they're in standard form, and remember what standard form is I write my terms in order from the greatest exponent down to the least exponent. Okay, once it's written in standard form, the term that has the highest value exponent, that is your leading term, and it has a leading coefficient. Okay, so this expression here, if I want to find horizontal asymptotes, I look at this term, which is the leading term in the numerator and the leading term in the denominator, and I compare the degrees. The degree in the numerator is less than the degree in the denominator. Whenever that happens, remember I said if n is the degree in the numerator and d is the degree in the denominator, and this is the rule, if n is less than d, that means if the degree in the numerator is less than the degree in the denominator, then the horizontal asymptote occurs at y equals 0, or, which is equivalent to saying it occurs at the x-axis. Okay, that's where my horizontal asymptote is. So for this example, the degree in the numerator is less than the degree in the denominator. So the horizontal asymptote is at y equals 0. That's simple, okay? Let's do the second one. Let's compare the degrees. The degrees in this example are equal. They both have degree 2. So in this case, n is equal to d. The degree in the numerator is equal to the degree in the denominator. They both have exponent 2, and they're both the biggest valued exponent in the whole expression. So n is equal to d. And we said when this happens, we're going to have that the horizontal asymptote is going to occur at a over b. And what is a? A is the leading coefficient in the numerator, and b is the leading coefficient in the denominator. So let's look at our leading coefficients. The leading coefficient in the numerator is 2. Remember, I'm only going to work with the leading terms. Since they have the same degree, then I need to look at the leading coefficient. The leading coefficient in the numerator is 2, the leading coefficient in the denominator is 3. And whenever I have the same degrees, then the horizontal asymptote is at a over b. A over b means take the leading coefficient in the numerator, which is 2, and take the leading coefficient in the denominator, which is 3, and that's where your horizontal asymptote is at. Okay, so for the case up here, if I were to draw my graph, the horizontal asymptote is actually my x-axis. For this case here, if I were to sketch the graph, my horizontal asymptote is at y equals 2/3. Okay, y equal 2/3. That's where the horizontal asymptote is at y equal 2/3. And that's, let's say if this is 1, then my horizontal asymptote would be somewhere up here. Okay? For this last example, the leading terms, I look at their degrees. The degree in the numerator is greater than the degree in the denominator. That means n is greater than d, and when that happens, there's no horizontal asymptote. There is a slant asymptote. Okay, no horizontal asymptote. Okay? So 3 rules you need to learn. When the degree in the numerator is less than the degree in the denominator, your horizontal asymptote is always going to be y equal to 0. When the degrees are the same, when they're the same, your horizontal asymptote is always going to be the leading coefficient in the numerator divided by the leading coefficient in the denominator. In this case, y is equal to 2/3. Okay? And when you have a greater degree in the numerator than you do in the denominator, there is no horizontal asymptote. It's very simple. I hope you've got it. You just have to remember these rules. If you don't, the last video I made on horizontal asymptotes will explain to you about the really small number divided by a really big number, and maybe you could figure it out saying, well, that is going to approach 0. So that's why y is equal to 0. And when we have the same degrees, since they're both equally big, I can cancel out x squared and x squared, and I'm left with 2/3. And that's your horizontal asymptote. Y is equal to 2/3. When the one in the numerator is greater than the denominator, there's no horizontal asymptote. And that's it. I hope you understood this example. The next video is, I'm going to give you a rational function, and we're going to look for everything. We're going to look for the domain. We're going to look for the y-intercept, x-intercepts, horizontal asymptotes, holes, and vertical asymptotes. We're going to do everything, okay? Everything you've learned so far. And that's the way you're going to see it on your quiz, where you have to look for everything, okay? I'll give you 1 or 2 examples, and then we'll be done. Okay, I'll see you then.